My name is Arif, and today I would like to help you relax and fall asleep guided by my voice and the story you are about to hear. We will dive into the Greek mythology as we go on a journey with Perseus and Andromeda, two lovers destined to be together in a magical world. Before we begin, however, let us take a moment to relax and find comfort in the space that we are in. Allow yourself to sink into your mattress and close your eyes. Allow any tension, anxiety, or worries that you have to melt away as you take your first deep breath in. As you breathe in, I want you to imagine yourself rising up into the sky on a gentle blue wave. As you hold that breath, feel yourself gracefully gliding through the air. Feel the mist brushing over your face, the feel of the refreshing ocean breeze on your face. And as you exhale, I want you to imagine the wave gently lowering down, 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 down to a peaceful rest on a glassy, clear sea. Breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now hold it, cresting on that wave for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and exhale, riding that wave down for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now hold it, cresting on that wave for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and exhale, riding that wave down for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now hold it, cresting on that wave for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and exhale, riding that wave down for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now hold it, cresting on that wave for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and exhale, riding that wave down for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Know that here and now, you are on calm seas. You can return to these gentle waves that you are in control of anytime you please. In their rhythm, you can find comfort and belonging. Now that we've taken the time to unwind and find comfort in the space that we are in, let us begin our journey with Perseus and Andromeda. Travel with me back in time to an era when the earth at our feet was new, a time where the world was still full of magic at every turn. The seas were full of creatures beyond your wildest imagination. Their cerulean waves lapped up on distant shores of islands whose names have been lost in time. Islands full of creatures, families, traditions, and, at times, heroes. Perseus was never supposed to be born. Long before his birth, his mother, Danae, was locked into a cellar deep within her father's kingdom. You see, Danae's father, Acrisius, the king of Argos, was given a prophecy by the oracle in Delphi. Deep within a cave, dripping with moss and aglow in the light of fireflies, Acrisius was told that his own grandson would cause his death. Fearing that he would be killed and overthrown, Acrisius locked his only daughter away, believing that if she could never have a child, he would be spared. But Acrisius failed to realize the power of fate and the allure that his beautiful daughter held. High in the heavens, Zeus, the god of thunder, was capable of seeing everything. And on one fateful day, as rain fell over the kingdom of Argos, he saw Danae for the very first time. He saw her beautiful dark skin that seemed to glow in the lamplight. He saw her long black hair, which she braided nimbly as she sat on the floor of her cellar. He saw her amber eyes that were full of hope and kindness, even as she was hidden away from the world. And in that gaze, he realized that he loved her. Knowing there was only one way to reach Danae, Zeus took a deep breath. With his powers, he transformed into a single cold raindrop. With a torrent of rain around him, he rolled off a cloud and descended from the heavens, falling, 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 falling through the air. He sailed down past snow-capped mountains, through forests of pine and cedar, until he sunk into the ground. Weaving through the soil, he found himself in Danae's bunker, where he transformed into his true self. Danae was relieved to have someone to keep her company in the prison she was forced into. Months later, Danae gave birth to a son, whom she named Perseus, and to her, Perseus was perfect. The first breath he took and the first cry he let out were the sweetest sounds she had ever heard. He was her son. He was the son of Zeus. Her father, however, didn't like hearing the cry. Still fearing the prophecy would come true, he knew he had to act quickly. He took his daughter and his grandson and sealed them in a large wooden chest. As a storm raged on the magnificent and rocky coast, he cast them into the sea. However, Zeus saw this happening. He could hear the cries of his son and of his lover, Danae. Desperate for their survival, he pleaded with Poseidon, the god of the seas, to calm the ocean and deliver his family to safety. Poseidon agreed, turning the dark blue, turbulent seas into calm, glassy water. It was only a few hours later that Danae found herself on the island of Seriphos, and what a magnificent new home it would be. The Greek island rose out of the turquoise waters, dotted with reefs. It was a mountainous island with green hills and olive trees as far as the eye could see. The kaleidoscope of blue and green in the water melted into the white sand beaches, which coiled around the edge of the island in a stunning display. Danae stepped out, holding her newborn son against her chest. With a smile, she promised her son that they would have a beautiful life together here, and she made good on that promise. They were taken in by a man named Dictys, who worked as a fisherman and had a fine home high on the mountains of the island. He welcomed them into his family with open arms, promising them they would always have a roof over their heads and food on their table. Perseus had a childhood unlike any other. As the sun rose over the island, painting the sea and sky a stunning display of orange, red, and pink, Perseus would rise from his soft wool bed and spring out into the fresh morning air. He would eat warm buttered bread as he watched the sun rise higher and higher in the sky. He'd smile as the island stirred to life below him. Fishermen set out into the stunning water to do their work for the day. Birds flit between the olive trees and weaved through the lemon groves, exhilarated by the promise of the day. And when it was time, Perseus would run down to the docks to help Dictys on the boat for the day. It was challenging work, but Perseus didn't mind, for in that hard work, he got to soak in the salty sea air and breathe in the satisfaction of a good day's work out on the ocean. During lunch, he would lie back in the boat and gaze up at the sky, dangling his toes in the refreshing water. Sometimes he'd even nap. He'd listen to the sound of the waves lapping the wooden boat as he rocked side to side, side to side, side to side, side to side. In that rhythm and motion, he felt oneness with nature around him. After his work on the boat was done, Perseus would return to the shore. Most days, he would spend the afternoon lounging in the sand by the water. He would lie there, his sun-kissed skin glowing, his mind completely at ease. Some days while he relaxed, he wondered if his father was above in the gorgeous blue sky, watching him with a smile. As Perseus grew older, he wondered if there was more out there besides the small island he had been raised to love and cherish. Specifically, he wondered if there was someone out there for him. Perseus found himself immersed in books about love and family. He longed to be the partner of someone. He longed to hold a woman in his arms. He longed to cherish her, to protect her, to provide for her in a way that left them both completely at ease. But on the island, there was no match for him. One day, once he was already a fine young man, Perseus was given a difficult task by Polydectes, the brother of Dictys. He urged Perseus to kill Medusa, a fearsome monster with the ability to turn people to stone. Perseus found himself thinking about his father. Zeus would never turn down a task so great, and so Perseus decided that neither would he. He packed a bag of freshly made bread, some water, and his favorite books, and he set out onto the seas. Only this time, he was going to go far, far beyond them. This task, however, was meant to be more challenging than Perseus realized. However, the gods had been watching him for his entire life, and they wanted nothing more than to aid the young son of Zeus. As he sailed across the seas, he was surprised when a flash of radiant, ethereal light encompassed him. In this light, a few of the gods and goddesses stepped forward, looking on the young man with kind eyes. The god Hermes gifted Perseus with a long, curved sword and a pair of his famed winged sandals, promising that they would aid him in his quest. Goddess Athena provided him with a mirror of sleek polished bronze, urging him that the only way to win was by using it. Even Hades, the god of the underworld, provided Perseus with a gift, a cloak of invisibility, which would make his challenging task much easier to complete. Armed with these divine aids, Perseus climbed to the cave of Medusa with ease and confidence. He zipped around Medusa, using his flying sandals and cape to escape her gaze. He used the mirror to lay his eyes on Medusa without ever having to look at her directly. And with the sword, he put an end to Medusa's evil wrath. As Perseus left the cave, he could feel the gods smiling on him. But Perseus didn't feel completely whole. And as he returned to his boat and looked down at the books he had brought, he knew why. Perseus had proven himself as a son of Zeus, but he felt as though his task was useless without someone special to share it with. That night, he lay on his boat and closed his eyes. Overhead, the inky black sky was awash with millions of stars that all seemed to be sparkling just for him. He listened to the waves as they splashed against his wooden boat and rocked him side to side, side to side, side to side, side to side. In the rhythm of nature, he found clarity. With a gentle whisper, he asked his father if there was someone out there for him. And though he didn't hear an answer, he felt something in his heart. He felt a wave of hope stronger than anything he had experienced in his life thus far. And with that hope, Perseus fell asleep smiling, with a sky full of stars overhead and a bountiful sea just below his fingertips. When morning cast itself across the land, it did so with a start. The seas were alive with waves larger than Perseus had ever experienced before. Though he was not afraid, he leaned back in the boat and allowed these waves to guide him through the dark, turbulent waters. And where he found himself was exactly where he was meant to be. In the distance, a misty island rose from the ocean. Massive granite rocks seemed to erupt from the water, peppered with swaths of evergreen moss. It was a sight that took Perseus's breath away, for more reasons than one, because on that rocky coastline, chained to one of those stunning rocks, Perseus saw Andromeda for the very first time. The waves seemed to crash just around her, illuminating her in a halo of stark white sea foam. Droplets of water spiraled off the waves, gathering in beads that glistened in her hair like diamonds. For a moment, Perseus felt as though he was frozen in time. Andromeda had stunning dark skin, unlike anything he had ever seen. Her hair cascaded around her shoulders in pitch black waves, plated with gold charms that made her seem to glow even brighter. And her eyes, her amber eyes with warmth like honey. They found Perseus and gazed at him in a way he had never been looked at before. It was as though he was being understood for the very first time in his life. In his boat, he raced to Andromeda's side. Her hands and feet were chafed from hours of trying to break free of her bonds. Perseus was breathless, desperate to help her. As he tried to free her from her chains, Andromeda told him how she had come to be trapped on these rocks. She was the daughter of Cepheus, the king of Ethiopia, and the queen, Cassiopeia. Her mother, a woman who valued beauty above all else, bragged to the world that her daughter was more beautiful than the sea nymphs. Wounded by this, the sea nymphs told Poseidon, who reacted in a rage. He sent waves and sea monsters to wear away at the beautiful coast of Ethiopia as a revenge for the queen's comments. Hoping to save his people, Cepheus offered Andromeda to Poseidon, hoping that that would appease him, and, unfortunately for Andromeda, Poseidon happily agreed. For days, she had been chained to the rocks, knowing a sea monster was going to take her life. It wounded Perseus to hear that Andromeda had been subjected to such pain. As he unlatched her from her chains, a single tear fell down Andromeda's cheek. Perseus raised a hand, gently wiping the tear away from Andromeda's soft cheek. With a kind smile, he asked Andromeda if she wanted to sail away with him. Andromeda climbed into his boat, pleased to be rescued by the hero. They set sail away from Ethiopia, heading out onto the seas which Perseus had grown so accustomed to. As the sun began to set, Perseus and Andromeda nestled on one edge of the boat and watched it paint a watercolor across the sky. Perseus took his final piece of bread and offered it to Andromeda. Though his stomach was growling, he felt nothing but happiness. Watching Andromeda bite into the piece of bread, watching her eyes light up with relief, it filled him with happiness. He felt as though his entire body was floating, as though he had been exposed to the secret life simply by being by Andromeda's side. They sat like that for an hour as they watched the sun descend over the horizon. Andromeda picked up a book, asking Perseus about it. Perseus told her it was his favorite. With a sleepy smile, Andromeda asked if Perseus would read it to her. Perseus began to read to Andromeda. His honey-sweet voice and the waves lapping against the boat were the only sounds for miles and miles. The poetry he read to Andromeda spoke of nothing but love, freedom, and happiness. He felt closer to her with every word that came out of his lips. And as Andromeda began to slip off to sleep, her hand gently intertwined with his, and Perseus felt a warmth flood over him. He watched her chest rise and fall, rise and fall, rise and fall, rise and fall, with every gentle breath she took of the night air. On occasion, her eyes would flutter slightly, as though she was seeing something sweet in a dream in some faraway land. But the sweetest thing of all was the way her hand tightened around his. Even in her sleep, she wanted him closer. Perseus laid a jacket over Andromeda, ensuring she was warm and comfortable. For hours, he sat like that in utter bliss, his gaze flicking between her and the overwhelming beautiful night sky. For the first time in his life, Perseus felt like he had found exactly what he had been searching for. When morning came, it was Andromeda who awakened first. She arose to the sound of gulls and seabirds flying overhead. filling the salty air with their songs. By then, the sun had begun to rise, casting a purple and pink haze over the calm water. Andromeda turned to see Perseus fast asleep, sitting up beside her. A smile crossed her face as she watched this warrior, this hero, sleep so peacefully. He slept with a small smile, turning the corners of his lips, and his hands clasped together for warmth. Gently, Andromeda placed a jacket over Perseus. Andromeda had never been in love before. The daughter of a king, she was constantly subjected to suitors from various kingdoms and wealthy families. But the men of those families were arrogant. They wanted her as a prize, as a bride they could tout around without truly caring for. Her life with them would be a life surrounded by servants, a life where she could have anything she wanted, except for true love and happiness. She was happier on this boat in the middle of nowhere with Perseus than she would be surrounded by lavish meals and rooms of gold with the suitors who had wanted to take her hand. And as the sun splashed across Perseus's face, waking him up, all Andromeda could do was smile at him, a wonderful sight to wake up to. Gently, Perseus took Andromeda's hand. In a soft voice, he told her that he didn't have much. He was a son of Zeus, but he was a simple man. He lived in a modest house. He worked as a fisherman. He didn't have fancy meals or fine things. However, he would be a wonderful husband if she would only have him. She would never worry, never feel unwanted or unloved. For the rest of her life, she would be cared for. He would read to her every day, watch the sun rise with her every morning, and hold her as she fell asleep every single night. Tears began to fill Andromeda's amber eyes. She wrapped her arms around Perseus, pulling him into an embrace. She cried, telling him that she wanted nothing more than a pleasant, peaceful life with him. She didn't need luxurious things. She didn't need a fancy title. She just wanted the kind man who had rescued her and read her poetry as they sailed across the seas. With full hearts, the two set sail for Seriphos, where they intended to make beautiful lives for themselves. When the island came into view, Andromeda could hardly believe how truly stunning it was. It was an oasis, almost a fantasy land, like something she had read about in books. As soon as they docked in the harbor, Andromeda felt at home. She stepped barefoot into the sand and felt it wrap around her, as though welcoming her to the island and allowing her to be part of it. When Danae spotted her son, she ran to him with tears streaming down her cheeks. She embraced him, grateful that he had come back. Polydectes had sent him on the mission so he wouldn't return, hoping that that would make Danae want to marry him. Using Medusa's head, Perseus turned Polydectes to stone, finally ridding his mother of Polydectes' unwanted affections. For the first time in a while, they were free. When Danae laid eyes on Andromeda, she felt as though it was the daughter she had been waiting her whole life for. The two sat by the sea for hours, discussing their lives as the daughters of kings. They felt understood, instantly connected by the troubling past they had both been forced to endure, by the weight that the title carried for them. By the end of the conversation, the sun was beginning to set. Danae kissed Andromeda on the cheek, welcoming her to the family. That night, by a crackling fire high in the mountains, Andromeda and Perseus had their wedding. The chilly night air was full of the simple, emotional melody of hundreds of crickets singing to the stars. The fire seemed to join in on the song, crackling and swaying with every gust of wind and every new piece of wood laid over its embers. Perseus held Andromeda's hands as they declared their love for one another. Just a year ago, Perseus had been utterly alone. Life on the island hadn't been bad, but there was something missing. He was a man, the son of a god, but he was nowhere near whole until Andromeda came into his life. And Andromeda never knew what true happiness was until she met Perseus. Her life had been all about presentation, all about being the perfect daughter of the kingdom. Now she was free. On this island in the middle of the sea, she found what she had always been searching for. She knew, deep in her bones, that this wasn't a random occurrence. This was fate, and she felt blessed to be experiencing it. After their wedding, the two sat down for an impressive feast as the Milky Way swayed and danced overhead. They dined on fish straight from the cerulean waters around them, garnished with lemons from the swaths of lemon trees along the mountains. They didn't have this meal alone. Instead, the entire town joined them. Stories were told, songs were sung, and laughter was shared. Perseus held Andromeda's hand as she became a true member of the community, one who was loved immediately for exactly who she was. As the embers in the fire died down and the winds began to pick up, Perseus and Andromeda retired for the night. Perseus opened the windows of their modest bedroom and took a deep breath of the air. He lay down beside his wife, embracing her with a satisfied smile. Just outside, they could hear the waves crashing against the white rocks and rolling onto the sandy beaches. They could hear the rustle of rosemary, lemon trees, and sage. They could smell the freshness of that sea air promising that beautiful things were just on the horizon. Perseus could feel Andromeda's heartbeat against his as they drifted closer and closer to sleep. Their breathing seemed to be in perfect unison. Their fingers intertwined as the blanket of peaceful sleep was pulled over them. Whenever Perseus stirred, Andromeda's fingers would squeeze against his, reminding him that she was right there. It was a beautiful dance they did throughout the whole night. Asleep, or in a drowsy state, or in between dreams, their body language whispered back and forth, "I'm here. Do not worry. I am here." When morning came, it almost seemed too good to be true. Andromeda awakened first. Though she was hungry and ready to face the day, she lingered in bed for a long moment. She wanted to soak in every second she had with her new husband. Being near him made her feel utterly at peace, even when no words or glances were being exchanged. Truly, it felt as though they had been made for each other. When the time finally came for Andromeda to get up, she slipped into the kitchen and prepared a modest breakfast. By the time she was done, Perseus awakened and followed her out onto the deck, where they sat on some rocks overlooking the island. They watched the sun rise over the water. Below, they watched the island stir to life. Fishermen got in their boats and set off over the orange and pink water, casting their nets into the ocean, hoping to get their bounty. Birds weaved between the orange groves and the lemon trees, carrying the fresh smell of citrus with them everywhere they dared to go. All around, the sounds of people cooking and stepping out to greet the day could be heard. The crack of a door, the sizzle of a pan, the laughter of a child. For an hour, they sat there on those rocks, picking at their breakfast and showing gratitude for the beautiful island around them. Neither of them imagined this is where their life would lead them, but they were eternally grateful that it had. They lived the rest of their lives in peace and harmony on the island. Some days, Perseus would set sail on the boat, while Andromeda tended to the garden, picking fresh vegetables and herbs for luscious dinners. Other days, they would take time to just relax. They would pack lunch and disappear into the countryside. They'd lounge in the green hills and enjoy the feeling of the sun on their faces. They'd whisper about their hopes and dreams as they sat there, remembering just how far they had come to reach that very moment. It was a beautiful life. I hope this story has helped you reach a night of peaceful, restful sleep. Please join me again tomorrow for another sleep story. Until then, sweet dreams.